There you go. Alright, today I'm going to show you guys how to put a GPS module. It's a BN220 GPS. I put one on my Aris 250B version 3 and it's nice now, so if I lose it, it's got a come home feature, and you can see how fast I'm going and a lot more other stuff. It's fun. I want to put one on here and see which one's faster, so I'm going to show you guys how to put a GPS module on pretty much any drone as long as you follow the procedures. It's not going to be the same exact way, but it's going to be the same wire layout, we'll say. I put an FSI A6B on here because the little receiver I had on there before didn't go that far and it would drop out in the park. And then I really like this too because this one gives me a ERRL level, which is like an RSSI level. I fly sky controller and fly sky receiver, and that's what it puts out for your controller range would be ERRL in the body controller. I just bought a cord so I can modify my controller so I can have more than the 6 channels. I want like 10 channels, and I want to put the ERRL level on a channel and have it displayed over my headset so I can see when it starts to go out of range. So I put that on there for more than one reason. It is big, but I like it. It makes it look like a bug. It is called the Furby because that's the name of the drone. It looks like a bug. I'm going to take off this top plate, these 4 screws, and then I'll show you what it looks like with the top plate off, and then I'll show you the 4 wires you're going to need. You're going to need a ground, a 5 volt, you're going to need a TX and an RX. And the way you're going to put the ground on there is black, usually to black, red to red, and the TX is actually going to go to RX from this GPS. So the GPS module TX goes to RX, and when you do the next one from the GPS module, the RX from the GPS module goes to TX. They're reversed. The TX from the GPS needs to go to RX on the drone, and the RX on the GPS needs to go to TX on the drone. So TX to RX, and then RX to TX. Sounds confusing, but it's really not. That's how it talks. And after that, you're good. As long as this is attached to your flight controller and you know what UART you're using. If you're flying drones, you should know what a UART is by now. I call them like USB plugs because they're kind of like that to me. It's like a universal plug. You got let's say this is this right here where my finger is pointing is a UART. It's got a ground, a 5 volt. Let's see, it's got an S bus, which would be RX6, and then it's got like a PN. Well, we're not going to use those. See, we need an RX and a TX, and usually you want the RX and TX to be on the same channel. So look what I found over here. I found a TX3 and an RX3. Those are the ones we're going to use over here on the side. So I'm going to take the top plate off of that, and we're going to look at those 2 pinouts. I like these ones because they're on the same channel and they're not being used. There's no funny stuff. So those are the ones I want to use. Keep it simple. And showing. We're going to also use, we're not going to use these grounds or these pins at all right here. We're just going to use the ones right here. We're going to use TX3 and RX3. And then we're going to use the ground from a totally different piece of the board. This is your flight controller right here. We're using TX, RX. And this is my transmitter. My transmitter is all in the flight stack. And I was looking at my flight controller top and bottom, and I don't want to use just the ground, and I don't want to tap into a 5 volt. And I noticed that the transmitter, my video transmitter, it has its own video ground coming in from the drone, and it has its own power supply coming in from the drone. But it also has a 5 volt out and a ground out that I'm not using. So I'm going to use those 2 for the powering and ground of the GPS. So ground and power are going to be from my transmitter, And the flight controller obviously is going to need the TX and RX from the GPS. That's how it's going to work. Alright, so I got the top plate off, and this is our video transmitter. It just came with the flight stack. That is the bottom picture you see down there. And we're going to be using the ground and the 5 volt out from that, and you can see there's no wires there. So I'm going to pull the plug and I'm going to insert my own wires into there. I do not want to change the plug at all because I have a nice little one over there off to the side that goes right here. It goes from here all the way to here, and I just want to insert 2 wires for the out power. What I'm gonna do is pull some wires out of one of these guys. I have a few extra ones. I probably won't do this one because this is a nice one. I'll grab one out of my kit. But I'm just gonna pull the wires out. Not pull, but lift the wires out. There's these little pins in there. You lift up the plastic and you can pull out each wire individually. You gotta pull up the pin though, and you can pull it out, and then you slide them back in and you push it down. Don't want to bend them too much, just a little bit to get it out. If you're worried about that it came up, just a dab of super glue, which will never come out. Yeah, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna insert a negative and a positive there for our GPS out, and then we're gonna go for those 2 little pins there, because on the map for this, if you're facing this way, which is the front of the drone, there's our TX3 and RX3, and those are the ones we're going to use there. We're going to have to solder really small on there. And, yeah. And hopefully it works. See, if you lift up those little plastic things, they'll pull out. It's not just a wire. The wire is actually crimped with like a little pin. All I did was I took a thumbtack, got up underneath one of the little pins on the side, and just lift up. Barely have to lift up and start wiggling the wire. It'll come out. So I'm gonna do that. Let's see, 1, 2 times, because I need a ground wire out of here, and we'll use these other wires too. We'll use these just to solder on to the board. This is just a scrap piece. I'll probably even save the plug. All these things came from like the cameras that I was getting. They come with extra plugs or different plugs, and so yeah, some of the cameras I lost and still had plugs, so I just didn't use the plugs, so I had more plugs. So yeah, I just saved my stuff, and I thought I was going to use the wire, but I've been using these plugs a lot too. We had to do that, pull the wires out, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so we're gonna put our ground wire in, which is gonna, oh sorry, this sucks. And we're gonna put our 5 volt power in there. Even though it says out, that's 5 volt out. I'm gonna plug my little wires in because I pulled my plugs, and I have these nice little ends to insert into here. So that's gonna be my ground and 5 volt. That other pin is something totally different. That pin would be an RX. I guess that's an RX pad. Okay, but we're not using that, so we're gonna stick to this one. Ground and positive. That's how we're gonna power the GPS. Once we get that, then we're gonna come over to those UARTs over here, and we're gonna put TX to RX to TX. Your wires in that you pulled out of the plug. You don't have to lift the wires on the plug. You're gonna put them in. They will just slide in. So make sure you got them facing the right way, and they will slide in. And I'll see if I can do this. Well, I can't, but I'll try. See, it's in there, and you'll know it's in there because you try to pull it out, it'll come out, and obviously it's not in there, but if it doesn't come out, it's clicked. it's in there. So yeah, now that we have a power out and a ground out, we have power to the GPS module. And now all we gotta do is TX and RX, which is our white and yellow wires. Put that red wire in there upside down, and you can see it even kicked it out. So I'm gonna turn that and stick it back in there, and they shouldn't be pushed out when you push your plug in. It slid right in there, and I heard the click right away. So just make sure you get the plugs in there facing the right way. You'll feel it and hear it click, and yeah, if you put it in there wrong, I guess they'll get pushed out because they don't slide on that pin. The really tricky part. I'm gonna take these extra little wires that I have here, just extra scrap from the plug that we used, and I'm going to put a little solder on the end of that wire, and it's like pre-temping it. I don't know what they call it. I'll put a little bit of solder into that wire, and I'm gonna try to put a little bit of solder on that board. So then when it comes time, all I have to do is barely touch them together, and they're both have a little bit of solder, and then make sure that they do not connect in the middle there. Probably not going to be able to see that, but there is solder now in that hole. Barely any. All I did was barely take my tip, barely took my tool, sat them next to each other, moved my tool away, and looked. There was nothing. Tapped it again. There was still nothing. So I took my tool, just my hot soldering iron, and touched just the solder in there for a second, and checked again, and it dropped my little dab of solder. That's all you need to get your solder to connect, or your wire to connect. So we're going to tin this wire too and do it. But first we're going to tin these two pads. So now that that one's full, I'm going to get this one. And you don't want to put that much heat at all, because you'll start frying stuff, or at least melting solder. Really solder, put a little bit of solder on the end of your wire. After you put a little solder under your end board, barely any, hold them next to each other and tap it. And if it looks like it's holding, give it a second, blow, tap it again really quickly, and you will see that they are together. I'll try to do one on video. It's really, really hard though to get a camera angle, let you see what I'm doing. I use the solder. So I'll take my wire. Got my wire. I like doing it over this little tin I have. I have a little bit of solder that's on this tin, so I'm just gonna try to hold this wire in the solder. Get a little bit of solder on the end of the wire. Barely any. Just enough so I know that it's holding. And if I get too much, I'll just break it away, like cut it off with my soldering iron. Just want a little bit on that wire. A nice little ball. Until I get it right, I'll keep pulling. And now I got this little itty bitty ball on there. This nice itty bitty clean little thing. I'm going to hold it over my pre-soldered little stuff. I'm going to take my jacked up tip, and the tip side that's pointing down the nicest, I'm going to try to solder these together. I'll give you an angle. I'm just watching YouTube right now. So I'm going to take this wire, and I like to start soldering the inside first and then the outside, because it's just easier that way. I'm going to take my pre-soldered wire and my soldering iron, and I'm going to try to solder these together without soldering the other wire to this. Oop, that seemed like we had it there, but I'm going to push down and touch it again. Oh, see, we got it to come off. And we got it. There's one, and there's two, and they're on there. They are not coming off. Not coming off. Clean that up a little bit. Yeah, I'm gonna put a little bit of super glue, not super glue, but hot glue probably in between these to stop them from conducting. I don't want them to come near each other. My solder is not the best, but it's not horrible at all. Those pads are not touching each other. Oh, almost dropped my lamp. See, they're not touching, so we'll be good. But I'd like to put a little bit of hot glue on there just to make sure no water or nothing gets close to them. It's not like it's positive, negative, but I just don't want them to. A little bit of super glue, extra super glue on probably one of my drones. Yeah, I grabbed it off one of my drones. There's this extra super glue on the side. It's just picked a little piece off, heated it up with my lighter, a little bit on a tack, and just put it on the edge of my board right there, just so that those don't have any chance of getting water on them and arcing out. Okay, now we're gonna connect our, I believe this was our RX is the inside white one, and TX is the outside yellow one. Usually it's in reverse, but that's how I wired them up to keep it simple. Because on here it wants TX, which is white, and RX, which is yellow, which is totally different. This RX3 is white. See, we got them matched up to match to our color coding. So TX from the GPS would be white, and our RX, because RT goes TX, RX, our RX on the inside of that is white, and then the RX on the GPS is yellow, and our TX on there is yellow. Just gotta put them together, and then we take our red wire to our positive out from our nice transmitter, and our ground to the nice transmitter, and it should boot up. It's not over yet though. We're gonna have to go into beta flight, activate that UART on the UART that we used, which was UART. Sorry, it's not UART. What's a UART? A TX3 and RX3, and then we'll go from there. Work. Good old chopstick again. A little hot glue. Just gonna stick them in there. Get some hot glue. We're gonna get it angled. We'll get it like that, and that's a Furby with GPS. I'm stoked. I thought it was a really old beta flight, which it's old, but it's not that old. It's like 2017. And I guess in 2017, beta flight came with GPS hold and GPS home. It wasn't called GPS rescue. And I was asking Josh Bardwell, I hope I'm saying his name right, why they didn't have GPS hold. And he said that beta flight was meant for racers and stuff. Well, I guess the old beta flight used to have GPS hold, and I'm glad that this little Furby has GPS hold, because that'd be cool, something cool to use, because my GPS on my Aris 250 has a newer beta flight, like 4.1 or 4.0, I don't know. It's a newer beta flight. It comes with the option to have the drone come home and show all the settings instead of have to do it through a CLI menu. Anyways, we got GPS hold and GPS home. So I can't wait to try the hold out, see how cool that would work out.